This happened about 3 months ago. I'm 32, and I thought a solo trip to the mountains would help me clear my head after a setback in my career. I set up my tent in a secluded spot, surrounded by pine trees and a shimmering lake. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. The first night I sat by the campfire, listening to the sounds of the woods. It felt nice, like a warm blanket. But then I heard something. It was a faint tapping noise, like someone was knocking on a door far away. I figured it was just branches brushing against the tent. Still, it kept going. Louder now. I felt chills crawling up my arms. Maybe I should check it out. Days passed and things got stranger. I noticed odd symbols carved into the trees, crude, jagged marks that looked like someone was trying to tell me something. I often felt as if I was being watched, like eyes were tracking me from the shadows. At first, I thought it was just paranoia, but it wouldn't go away. Then one evening I found something unnerving outside my camp. It was a child's toy, a faded rubber duck. I was miles from any town. How did that get there? I turned around, my heart ripping up my throat. The next day I stumbled upon an old photograph in the dirt. A family, their faces scratched out, my stomach twisted. I shouldn't have picked it up, but I couldn't stop myself. I felt a chill creep in. That night I heard the tapping again. This time, it sounded closer. My heart raced. I unzipped the tent and stepped outside. The cool air hit my face. I shivered and peered into the darkness. The forest felt heavy, like it was closing in on me. I felt cold fingers of fear digging into my back. Then I heard a whisper. "Get out!" It made my blood run cold. I wanted to run, but I froze. My eyes locked on the shadows. I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. A figure? I clenched my fists, trying to calm my pounding heart, but it was gone before I could focus. I turned back to the tent, ready to bolt inside. I could barely breathe. Just as I reached for the zipper, I heard a voice behind me. "Why are you here?" The words chilled me. I turned slowly. Nobody was there. I felt sick. I scrambled into the tent, zipping it up tightly. I tried to calm myself, but the darkness outside felt different. The tapping stopped. I lay there, staring at the thin fabric of the tent, wishing for morning. I thought if I waited it out, I could leave. But I couldn't shake that feeling of being watched. Sunrise finally came, but I never felt more trapped. I packed up my things fast and left the campsite. I could still hear that voice echoing in my head. "Get out!" Even now I can't shake it. I'm back home, but I can't forget those mountains. They're always with me. Back home I tried to reclaim my normal life, but the memories lingered. The tapping, the whispers, the feeling of someone, or something, watching me. I avoided the woods. I couldn't bear even thinking about those mountains. But then, one night, I received a message that changed everything. My phone buzzed awake on the nightstand. It was a text from a friend, Lisa. "Hey, did you hear about those weird disappearances up by the old campgrounds?" My heart dropped. I didn't want to hear about anything related to that place, but I felt drawn to reply. "Yeah, heard some rumors. What do you know?" She replied quickly. "They're saying people have gone missing, like just vanished. The police are investigating but can't figure out why." My fingers trembled as I typed any specific details. She sent a series of texts saying how search teams had found belongings but no people. "And get this," she added, "there's been reports of strange markings on trees near the site, like old symbols. Can you believe that?" I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The same markers I saw. Was this tied to my experience? I didn't want to admit it, but I felt compelled to find out more. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had uncovered something important when I was out there. A few days later, I decided to head back to the mountains. It felt reckless, but curiosity had a grip on me. I arrived, and the area was eerily quiet. No campers, no hikers, just me and the trees. But something felt off. The air was thick. and darkness hung low against the pines. I walked the path toward my old campsite. Each step triggered memories of the symbols and sounds I had experienced. I glanced at the trees, my heart racing, half expecting to see the crude carvings I remembered. As I reached the clearing, my breath hitched. The campsite looked untouched, but the air carried a strange energy. I gathered my courage and dug through the dirt where I had found the photograph before. Something caught my eye, a glint of metal. I uncovered a small, rusty locket. My fingers hovered over it. Should I open it? The unease pulsed through me. That's when I heard it. The tapping, louder now, echoing off the trees. It was like a warning, a reminder of the unease that drove me back here. I turned around, and the shadows felt darker, deeper. My heart raced. Suddenly, a gust of wind whipped through the clearing, knocking the locket from my hand. It landed open, revealing a faded photograph inside, faces staring blankly back at me. I realized then they weren't strangers. They were the same faces from the first photograph I found, scratched out and distorted. Before I could process that revelation, something shifted in the trees behind me. A shape, a figure was emerging just beyond the shadows. My mind raced, a survival instinct firing like a bullet. I took a step back, trembling. The whispers returned, clearer this time. "Get out!" Everything within me screamed to run, but I stood frozen, the weight of what I had encountered settling deep in my bones. The landscape felt alive, breathing with threats unknown, and then I noticed something else. The symbols on the trees. They weren't just random marks. They were forming a pattern, moving closer to me. I had to figure out what it all meant before it was too late. The figure in the shadows stepped forward, and my breath hitched in my throat. No longer a distant silhouette, it was undeniably human, but twisted, unnatural. This was not the same, but a reflection of something darker. Panic gripped me. I half wished for the tapping to return, anything to drown out the dread washing over me. "Who are you?" I managed to croak. My voice felt like a whisper against the weight of the air. Instead of answering, the figure stared, unblinking. I strained to see its face, but it was obscured, just beyond comprehension. My instincts kicked in. I backed away slowly, careful not to look away from the entity. The symbols danced in my periphery, drawing my attention like a moth to a flame, but I refused to be lured. Then I spotted it, a flash of movement in my line of sight, something darting between the trees. I turned my head too quickly. The figure was now closer, its features becoming clearer. I could see the same faces I recognized in the locket. Their mouths were open, frozen in silent screams. I stumbled back as the world around me warped. "No! What do you want?" My legs felt weak and wobbly like jelly. The whispers surged, now a cacophony. "Join us! Stay with us!" The haunting refrain filled my mind, a siren's call that threatened to pull me into the darkness. I spun on my heels, and the ground felt uneven beneath my feet. That's when I saw it. A larger symbol carved into the base of a nearby tree, more intricate than the others. My heart raced. It was a warning, or maybe an invitation. I crouched to get a closer look, and I could swear it pulsed with energy. "Get out!" My voice cracked, straining against the force of the whispers, but I was drawn to the symbol. I reached out. Touching it felt oddly warm. The moment my fingers grazed the bark, a jolt surged through me. A vision flashed in my mind, a group of people laughing around a campfire. I recognized them. They were part of the photographs I had seen. They looked normal, but now held a sinister twist. Faces shifting, melding into one. Their laughter echoed, a melody that turned into shrieks. Then it all snapped back to reality. I was still crouched before the tree, trembling. The whispers had intensified, spiraling into a frenzy. "Stay! Stay!" I shot up, heart hammering, desperation gnawing at my insides. I had to escape. I turned, panic overwhelming every rational thought in my head, and sprinted back to the path leading out. The forest felt alive around me, branches reaching like hands trying to pull me back. As I ran, the figure was somehow still behind me, shadows blending into the trees. Every glance back confirmed it was there, just out of reach, relentless in its pursuit. But I couldn't stop. I wouldn't. Finally, I burst out of the tree line into the open air. The familiar sight of my car came into focus, a beam of hope slicing through the panic. I fumbled with the keys, breathless, my eyes darting back to the forest. That darkness still lingered, but a new urgency twisted in me. I had to figure out what I had stumbled upon. I finally unlocked the door and dove in, but just as I was about to start the engine, a last thought struck me. The symbol. What had it meant? With trembling hands, I picked up my phone and searched for anything related to those markings. That's when my screen lit up with an article dated years ago. Gripping headlines screamed about the same symbols, linked to a string of disappearances. I felt a chill creep over me. There were things I had yet to uncover, and it appeared I was only beginning. The next morning, I awoke with a foggy mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that the previous night had transformed everything. I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, the article still on the screen, staring at the same ominous symbols. My heart raced anew as I reread the words. Disappearance, local legends, lost to the forest. Each phrase felt like a jagged piece of glass in my brain. I took a deep breath, trying to organize my thoughts. I needed answers. I had to know what was happening. After a hurried breakfast, I decided to visit the local library. Maybe they had old newspapers or books on local folklore. As I drove, shadows seemed to loom over the road, echoing my unease. I kept glancing back at the forest, expecting to see that figure watching me from the tree line. At the library, the smell of old paper settled over me like a comforting blanket. I queried the librarian about local histories and any records of disappearances. She raised an eyebrow, but led me to a section filled with dusty shelves. I dove into the stacks, skimming through musty books. Most were filled with tales of the region's beauty, but a few mentioned dark spots in history. I finally came across a compilation of unexplained events tied to the woods. One entry caught my eye. The Lost Gatherers. A group of friends had vanished during a camping trip in the same area I had explored. Their last known location matched the clearing I had stumbled upon. As I read, a chill settled in my stomach. They were reported missing exactly 10 years prior to the day. It felt too coincidental. I began to piece things together. The photographs, the whispers, the figure. It all felt connected. Suddenly the library doors swung open. A gust of wind rushed in, creating a shiver down my spine. I turned, and my heart sank. There stood a familiar face, the man from the photos in my locket. He was older, but his eyes held the same haunted look. "Do you need help?" he asked, voice low and shaky. For a moment I was frozen. "What are you doing here?" I managed to ask, the words tumbling out like marbles. He looked around nervously, as if afraid he would be overheard. "You shouldn't be looking into them. It was supposed to stay buried." Every instinct screamed at me to retreat. "Why? What do you know?" "There are consequences," he said, glancing at the door as if someone might come through. "They'll find you if you keep digging." His warning sent a bolt of fear through me. But another part whispered that I needed to know. I couldn't back down now. Before I could ask more, he turned and left, disappearing into the afternoon light. What had he meant by they? An uneasy feeling settled over me. I had plenty of questions, but I could sense the danger lurking beneath the surface. I had to decide, push forward into this dark mystery or leave it all behind. But as I turned back to the books, I realized my answer. That figure hadn't just haunted my night, it now bled into my days. Suddenly, I heard a rustling sound outside the library. I stepped to the window and gasped. The figure stood there, watching, My blood ran cold as our eyes met. This was no coincidence anymore. I had to go, fast. I bolted from the library, heart pounding. The sunlight outside felt blinding, but there was no time to think. I headed toward my car, every instinct telling me to move quickly. I glanced back, and the figure was still there, unmoving, like a statue carved from shadows. Once inside the car, I locked the doors and fumbled with the keys. My hands trembled as I started the ignition. The figure's stare felt like ice, freezing me in place even as I accelerated away from the library. I couldn't stop looking in the rearview mirror. He still stood there watching. I needed to talk to someone who might know more. My friend Sarah had grown up here, and maybe she had heard something about the disappearances. I called her as I drove, trying to sound casual despite the fear in my voice. "Hey, it's me," I said when she picked up. "Do you think I could come over? I need to ask you something." "Sure. Everything okay?" she replied. Her voice was warm and friendly, but I could sense the underlying concern. "Yeah, I'll explain when I get there." I hung up, feeling a mix of relief and dread. Maybe she could help make sense of all this. I focused on the road, but the shadows from the trees along the roadside kept flaring in my peripheral vision. It felt like something was stalking me, waiting for just the right moment to pounce. When I arrived at Sarah's house, the familiar comfort of her front porch was a welcome sight, but I hesitated at the door. My heart felt heavy as I thought about what to tell her. Would she believe me? What if sharing this information put her in danger too? I knocked, and she opened the door almost immediately. "Hey, what's wrong?" she asked, noticing my pale face. I stepped inside, taking a deep breath. I saw something in the woods, something that scares me. We sat in her living room, the cushions swallowing me up as I outpoured the details. What I had read, the warnings, the figure. Her expression shifted from confusion to concern, and finally to a shared sense of dread. "People around here talk about the old stories, the ones no one wants to remember," she said quietly, biting her lip. "There's definitely something off about those woods." "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I asked, surprised she hadn't mentioned it before. "Because I was scared, just like you." In that moment, the weight of it all hit me. The stories of the lost gatherers, the warnings, the figure. I felt trapped between knowledge and ignorance. Just then, something outside caught my attention, a flash of movement near the tree line at the back of her yard. I stood up, heart racing. "Did you see that?" Sarah strained her eyes toward the window. Silence stretched between us, heavy and thick. "What is it?" "I thought I saw... I need to check." Before she could respond, I dashed toward the back door. But just as I stepped outside, an overwhelming sense of wrongness flooded my senses. The air felt electric, charged with anticipation. It was as if the forest itself was watching, waiting for me to step closer. Then I saw it, a flash of white cloth flapping in the breeze. It looked like a piece of clothing. Fear clenched in my gut as I approached the edge of the forest. What if it belonged to someone who had vanished? "I should go back," I muttered to myself, stepping back from the edge, but something deeper pulled me in. That's when I heard it, a whisper, barely audible. "Come." My breath quickened. I turned to run back to Sarah, but the ground seemed to shift underfoot, and the shadows of the trees loomed larger, closing in around me. I was no longer just a curious outsider. This was personal. I was being drawn into something much bigger than myself. And now, I was afraid I wouldn't be able to escape. The ground felt like it was shifting beneath me. I turned back to the house, adrenaline pumping. "Sarah," I called, but my voice felt weak against the wild sounds of nature. The trees were buzzing, and the whisper echoed in my mind, a soft siren pulling me closer instead of letting me flee. I took one step back, then another, my instinct screaming for me to run inside. But can't I know? Part of me craved answers. I'd come this far. That's when I saw it again, a flash of white peeking through the branches. "Sarah!" I yelled again, the urgency in my voice mirroring the panic that surged within me. I could almost hear her footsteps pounding the floor inside. Slowly, I stepped into the tree line. The moment I crossed the boundary between her yard and the forest, a chill ran down my spine. The trees seemed to close around me, their branches twisting like fingers trying to hold me back. A sense of wrongness permeated the air. "Stop!" The voice was clear this time, almost like a command. I froze, heart racing. It wasn't just the wind. It felt like something was watching me, watching and waiting. I glanced back, half expecting to see Sarah, her worried face barely visible through the fading light of dusk, but she hadn't followed. Don't be an idiot, I thought. I shouldn't be here alone, but the white flash caught my eye again. I had to know what it was. I took another cautious step forward, inching deeper into the darkening woods. As I moved closer, the whispers morphed into distinct words, chilling my blood. "Join us." I shuddered, taking a quick step back. Panic threatened to rise as I realized I was not alone, that there was something in those woods, something that had claimed the others, a story I could barely comprehend. Suddenly I spotted it. A torn piece of fabric snagged on a low-hanging branch. It had letters printed on it, a name I would soon know too well. Ella. My breath caught, and I stumbled back, almost falling to the ground. My thoughts raced. Ella was one of the missing, a name I had read about in the library. Then I heard footsteps, not from behind but from deeper in the woods. Not just whispers now, but shadows shifting with intention. "Come to us." I turned and bolted back toward the house, desperation fueling my speed. I could feel the ground thumping beneath my feet, almost as if the forest itself was alive, angry at my retreat. Branches snapped behind me, and I could hear the thick rustle of leaves as something followed. My heart pounded in my ears like a war drum. I sprinted, pushing the limits of my strength, not daring to look back. The doorway to Sarah's house loomed ahead like a safe harbor. I burst through the back door, slamming it shut behind me. "We need to go," I gasped, peeking out the window. I could see the trees standing still, but my heart told me something was still out there. "What happened?" Sarah asked, eyes wide with fear. "Was someone out there?" I opened my mouth to explain about Ella, the whispers, the fabric, but the room seemed to shift around me. Something told me that even worse things were waiting for us. The moment I hesitated, I felt the air thickening again, as if the shadows were creeping back toward the house. "Sarah, we have to leave this place," I said, voice trembling. "I don't think we're safe here." I didn't need to look outside to know. Whatever was in the woods had marked us. The hunt had begun, and I knew we had run out of time. The sound of the door slamming echoed through the kitchen, reverberating like a warning bell. Sarah's eyes darted towards the window, then back to me. "What do you mean we're not safe?" I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the sweat along my temples. "I went into the woods. I saw something that belonged to Ella. And now I hear voices. They were calling me." She stepped back, leaning against the counter, her face a mix of confusion and fear. "We need to call someone, the police." "No," I interrupted, glancing nervously at the woods beyond the window. "We can't. Not yet. They won't believe us, and if it really is hunting us, we can't give it a reason to escalate. What do you suggest? Just sit here? We've got to do something." I paced the kitchen, heart racing as I thought through our options. Outside, shadows danced at the edge of the trees, as if waiting for the chance to slip inside. If we stay, it finds us. If we leave, it might still follow. "Then what?" Sarah's voice wavered, but I could see the determination behind her fear. I took a deep breath and focused. "Let's search the house, see if there's anything that can help." Truthfully, I didn't know what I was looking for, but standing still felt like an invitation to whatever lurked outside. We moved quietly, checked every room. I opened the living room door, scanning the shelves packed with dusty books. I quickly pulled one out, a book on local legends. It was old and worn, but might mention something about the woods. "Find anything?" Sarah asked, rifling through a drawer in the kitchen. "Just some old stories," I said, flipping through the pages. "Maybe something about the missing people." As I read, Sarah moved to the back door, peering out. "It feels different, like the air's thicker." "Don't open it," I snapped, still focused on the text. "If they're out there, we can't let them in." "That's just it," she said, her voice trembling. "I think someone is trying to come in." My heart stopped. What? There was a knock, soft at first, then louder, like it was testing the resilience of the door. I glanced at Sarah, panic etched on her face. What do we do? I wanted to scream at the noise to stop, to make whatever was out there leave us alone. "Stay quiet," I whispered. "Don't make a sound." The knocking persisted, a rhythmic insistence that chilled me. I closed the book, the words in my mind fading as I focused on the sound. I strained to hear beneath it. One voice and then another, whispering in low tones that seeped through the cracks. "Let us in." "She said she'd find me," another voice murmured. My throat tightened. They weren't here for any of us, but for someone else. Sarah. "Sarah, step back!" I yelled, grabbing her arm just as the door rattled violently. "We have to—" Before I could finish, the door shattered inward, splintering across the room. A shadow surged through the opening. I barely had time to react as the figure plowed towards us, its features obscured by darkness, whispering warnings I could barely comprehend. Then everything went dark. I broke free from the darkness, gasping for air like I'd just resurfaced from deep water. Panic coursed through me. Where was I? Where was Sarah? My heart pounded as I blinked, trying to make sense of my surroundings. A dim light flickered above me, casting ghostly shadows on the walls of a small room. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust. I was in what looked like an old cellar, concealed from the outside world. Heavy wooden beams stretched overhead, and the air was damp and cold. I could hear the distant murmur of voices, but they were muffled, like a radio tuned to the wrong station. "Sarah," I yelled, hoping that she could hear me. My voice echoed around me, but there was no answer. I scrambled to my feet, my limbs shaky. The last thing I remembered was the figure rushing toward us. Had they taken us? Fear knotted in my stomach. I couldn't let myself spiral into despair. I had to find her. I took a step forward, squinting into the corners of the cellar. Shelves lined the wall, cluttered with dusty jars, old tools, and faded photographs. One of the photos caught my eye, a picture of a group of people standing in front of a cabin in the woods. I picked it up, examining the faces. One of them looked familiar. I shook my head to clear the fog. This wasn't the time. I dropped the photo and moved closer to a stairway that led up. I pressed my ear against the door at the top. I could hear voices clearly now, but they were no longer muffled. They sounded almost comforting. Wrong. "Help us, please." The words struck a chord, sending chills up my spine. I couldn't tell if they were begging or threatening. My hand trembled as I pushed on the door, pushing it open slowly. Outside, the same shadowy figure I'd seen before loomed at the far end of the hallway. Its form shifted uneasily, but this time it wasn't rushing at me. It stood still, almost waiting. Behind it, faint light flickered, beckoning me in. "Help us!" The voice came again, clearer now. It was coming from the figure. "Sarah!" I called out hesitantly, stepping closer. The figure tilted its head, the shadows obscuring its features, but I could feel its gaze on me. "Seek the truth," it whispered, the words wrapping around me like chains. "Find her." I hesitated, confusion swirling in my mind. "Find who?" Before I could get an answer, a loud crash echoed from behind me. I spun around, adrenaline kicking in again. A slate of wood fell from above, crashing down the stairs in front of me. I was trapped. Adrenaline surged. Instinct kicked in. I rushed back into the dark cellar, but it was only filled with one option: the back wall. I pressed against it, breathing heavily, but I felt something behind it. That's when I saw it. A faint light peeking through a crack. Maybe that was my way out, but suddenly the figure was there, blocking the way, its whisper drowning out the chaos. "The woods will know," it hissed. I couldn't linger. I had to make a choice: stay and confront whatever was behind me, or push through past the figure. In a split second, I lunged towards the light. If I was wrong, I feared I would never see Sarah again. As I lunged toward the sliver of light, the figure's coldness brushed against my arm. I shivered but pushed on, the radiance growing brighter. I squeezed through the narrow opening, feeling rough wood graze my skin. On the other side, I stumbled into a small clearing, surrounded by towering trees. A crisp autumn chill filled the air, and sunlight filtered through the branches, illuminating the forest floor. It felt so alive compared to the darkness I had just escaped. I took a deep breath, letting the fresh air fill my lungs. "Sarah?" I called again, my voice stronger now. I scanned the area, but nothing stirred except the wind rustling through leaves. Anxiety gnawed at me once more. Had I truly escaped, or had I stepped deeper into whatever had captured us? A movement caught my eye. Something flickered among the shadows. I turned, heart racing. A figure darted behind a tree. Was it Sarah? I pushed forward, urgency fueling my steps, but as I rounded the trunk I found nothing but empty air. My mind was racing. I had to think. I remembered the photo, the faces in front of that cabin. What if I could find that cabin? It felt like a lead, maybe even a safe place. I moved deeper into the trees, trying to silence my thoughts and just focus. The memory of the figure crept back, that strange whisper haunting me. Seek the truth. I stopped abruptly. What truth? I wasn't in the mood for riddles, just a way to find Sarah. But maybe the truth was the key to uncovering where she was. My thoughts spiraled, but then I heard something again, a faint sound, slightly familiar. It almost sounded like Sarah's laugh. I felt the rush of hope. "Sarah, is that you?" I shouted, adrenaline giving me a jolt. I hurried toward the sound, the branches scratching at my skin. But nothing could deter me now. I had to find her. Suddenly the laughter stopped. An eerie silence fell over the woods. The air grew cold again, and for the first time I felt the weight of being utterly alone. I turned around, scanning my surroundings. That's when I noticed it, a cabin in the distance, barely visible through the thicket. Its form was worn, almost rotted, but it beckoned me forward, promising shelter. As I made my way closer, dread washed over me. What if no one was inside? What if it was some kind of trap? But what choice did I have? I approached the door, a heavy thud echoing in my chest. I reached for the doorknob and hesitated. I recalled the figure's words again. "The woods will know." Pushing the door open, a creaking sound reverberated, and darkness yawned before me. I took a shaky step inside, bracing myself for whatever lay ahead. Then I saw something on the floor, a familiar scarf, yellow against the dull wood. My heart dropped. It was Sarah's. But something shifted behind me, and when I turned around, the door slammed shut. Panic roared through me. I was not alone anymore. The air grew thick, buzzing like a live wire. I pressed my back against the door, heart racing, ears straining to catch any sound behind me. I heard it again, the faint whispering, a chorus echoing around the cabin. "Join us! Join us!" My chest tightened as shadows crept into view, dark figures emerging from the corners of the room, blending with the darkness. They moved with an unnatural fluidity, almost like smoke, swirling and twisting, their forms shifting out of focus. Desire and fear clashed furiously within me. They were here for a reason, and deep down I feared I knew what it was. "Sarah!" I shouted, the desperation punctuating my voice. The thrill of panic shot through me as I turned and raced toward the thicket behind me, searching for a way out, but the lurking figures started advancing, closing in. "Help us, please." The voices now filled my mind, indistinguishable from my own racing thoughts. Anything they might promise felt insidiously tempting. I gritted my teeth, adrenaline pushing me. I shoved against the door, but it didn't budge. Was it locked? I glanced back, and they were right there, their movements eerily serene, gliding toward me. "Get out!" I screamed, my heart pounding like a war drum, full of primal fear. I could almost feel the energy rising in the air, thickening with their presence. A sudden clattering noise broke through the whispers, and my gaze shifted to the far side of the cabin. A window flung open violently, inviting in a night breeze that carried the scent of pine and decay. Could this be my escape? Without giving it a second thought, I darted toward the open window, throwing myself through with a grunt. I stumbled onto soft earth, the trees framing the clearing like ancient sentinels. Then I froze. The whispers were gone. The shadows had retreated, swallowed up by the darkness of the cabin. In their place, I could only hear the wind rustling through the trees. "Sarah!" I called, panic swelling in my chest once more. From the corner of my eye, something flickered, a figure moving among the trees. "Sarah!" I dashed in the direction of the movement, desperation fueling my every step. But the trees seemed to shift against me, their branches twisting together, making every step feel harder. "Over here!" a voice echoed, a faint whisper carried on the wind. It felt like an invitation, like I belonged in that space. "Is that you?" My heart raced as I followed the sound. I could barely see through the underbrush. "Sarah!" The figure came into view, a faint outline just beyond a circle of trees. As I pushed through the last few branches, I found myself staring at the very original campsite. But it was different now. The ground was marked with symbols, all too familiar, glowing softly, like embers in the night. A chill crept over me. I looked around, desperate for Sarah or any sign of life, and there it was. The yellow scarf hung on a low-hanging branch, swaying gently like a flag. "Sarah!" I cried one last time, my knees threatening to buckle. I stepped toward the scarf, reaching out, my fingers brushed against it, and in that instant, a rush of memories flooded my mind. All the faces, the whispers, the joy morphing into terror. But before I could fully comprehend what was unfolding, a figure emerged from the edge of the clearing, tall, cloaked in darkness. It looked like her. It sounded like her. "Why did you leave me?" It wasn't Sarah's voice, but the tone struck through me like ice. "Sarah," I whispered, dawning realization casting a veil of dread. The face became sharper, and what I found sent chills down my spine. I recognized her features, but they were twisted, distorted, an echo of her, not quite real. "Stay with us." The figure beckoned, and as it whispered, the ground seemed to ripple, revealing glimpses of other lost souls emerging from shadows, pieces of a puzzle I never wanted to complete. And just like that, in a blink, I was once again at the cabin's threshold, where I began, dizzy with confusion. I could still hear the whispers, the darkness reaching out to me. "Join us!" I turned, sprinting back into the tangled pathways of the woods, the symbols flickering behind me, never quite leaving my mind. Would they catch up? Was I ever truly free from this place? Finally, the pinprick of light that marked the exit of the forest came into view. I burst through the trees and into the open valley, breathless, lungs burning, heart racing. But I was not alone. I could feel them lurking in the back of my mind, the whispers still trailing behind me. "You can't escape." As I reached my car, every instinct screamed at me to jump inside and drive away as fast as possible. But deep down, I knew that even as I fled, the questions would linger. Had I truly escaped, or just uncovered the beginning of a mystery woven deep into the shadows of the woods? I may never know what had happened to Sarah, or if the forest itself truly cared whether I left or stayed. All I could do was hope that whatever darkness had enveloped us hadn't found a way to follow me home. I backed out, glancing once more at the trees, and drove away, leaving behind unanswered questions and unsettled shadows that would forever stalk the rim of my memory.